Hello. Oh, I'm cut off. Hello, everybody. We are back for some more Drac. It's been a while since we did any Dracula, and I think it's mostly just due to the fact that June's entries were placed a little weirdly. There's one on June 5th, and then the next one is June 17th, and so there's a big gap, and I ended up just deciding to wait because usually, and like it is true here too, usually, well, okay, that maybe not the best example, but it's still pretty short. Like, usually each entry is just a few pages or less than a page. And so I kind of like streaming when I can stream something a little bit beefier. Though, if you'd rather I stream just like a little tiny stream that's only one, let me know. But yeah, like, as is currently, I tend to prefer when I have some more content. And, things just kept piling up, and it ended up being that pretty much all the entries of June piled up. And I was thinking on the last Dracula stream at the end of May, I was like, should I do June 5th? Because it will be easier, because I was thinking at the time I kind of wanted to do a May Master stream, and so I was like, be easier to do a May Master stream if I don't do June today. And then I was like, it's really short, I'll just do it. And now that June really is gonna be one video, I'm kind of frustrated that I did that. But yeah, so if you don't know, I actually made a video that combined all of the May Dracula streams into one. And it cuts out my intros, my outros, any like distractions and stuff like that I could find. So it is just all of the May entries. And so if, you are new, if you haven't caught up, that is a great video to use to catch up. So I'll pretty much be doing the same for June, but pretty much organically. And I think what I'm gonna do is when I upload the VOD to YouTube, I'm gonna stick the June 5th entry first. So that'll hopefully be in the VOD, and it will actually be all of June. But anywho, so I actually have something else that I want to show you guys before we actually begin the reading. Oh, it's pretty tiny. Can we make you bigger? Yes, yes we can. All right. Sorry about this at the bottom. I'm not signed in on this and was lazy. So I was looking up how to pronounce a certain word that I think I've asked how to pronounce before, and you guys helped me, and then I just kept forgetting how to pronounce it, and so I looked it up again, and I actually ended up finding this Tumblr post that was super useful and helpful. And so I think I'm just going to read this Tumblr post first before we get started, because I think it's very informative. My shirt is very similar in color to the bar at the bottom. All right, so a point of clarification, more linguistics, content warning, slurs. Another Dracula Daily related post. In the novel Dracula, the Count has minions who are a racist caricature of people of the Romani ethnicity. I think that is how you pronounce it, based on what they're going to say later. Apologies if I mispronounce any of the words here. That is likely. Stoker uses a variety of terms in the text, and as a person of Romanian ethnicity, I would like to clear up some possible places of confusion. The most commonly known word in the English-speaking world that Stoker uses for Romani people is gypsy. This is an English word, ultimately descended from the word Egyptian, based on a misunderstanding by medieval European Christians that the itinerant Roma were nomadic Egyptians based on an interpretation of the Bible that the ancient Egyptians were scattered by God. This is incorrect, and most historical, linguistic, cultural, and genetic evidence suggests that the Roma originated in northern India, which might have been obvious if medieval Europeans talked to any of them, or knew anything about India. Most Roma today consider gypsy to be a slur, although some do not. This is ironically similar to the attitude about the word by indigenous. Let me redo that sentence. Most Roma today consider gypsy to be a slur, although some do not. This is ironically similar to the attitude about the word Indian by indigenous peoples of the Americas. Among social justice activists, both words are regarded as slurs and faux pas, and at the bare minimum, both are inaccurate. So if you are still using that word in 2022, and you are not a Romani person, knock it off. Stoker, however, also uses the word Romani in his text, which is just his spelling for Romani. Because of the 19th century, it was known in English that Romani was the endonym, the word a people used for themselves, as opposed to the exonym, the word a people use for others. If you're a descendant of settlers and live in North America, and you find yourself often confused by the changing names of indigenous groups, it's because, as is the case here, the exonym for that group was a slur and got adapted into English simply because settlers encountered that group's enemies before encountering the group itself. The word Rom means man in the Romani language. Romani means woman. Romni means woman. Roma is plural. Romani is a female adjective. Romano is a male adjective. Now, where we can really get into some misunderstandings in the context of Dracula is with the term Romanian, which Stoker often spells Romanian. Romani does not equal Romanian. Romanians are people from the country of Romania, of which Transylvania is a part, as well as Wallachia and part of Moldavia and Bukovina. Stoker's castle Dracula is located in Romania. Galați is in Romania and is called Galați in Romanian. The words Romania, Romanian, etc. have nothing to do with the words Roma, Romani, etc. The name of the country of Romania comes from a belief on the part of the Romanian people. They are historically descended from a province of the Roman Empire, once called Dacia. The greatest piece of, would that be Dacia? Yeah, that would be Dacia. The greatest piece of this evidence is that Romanian is a Romance language, which is to say a language descended from the language of the Romans, Latin. Despite being surrounded by nations speaking Slavic tongues, Romanian is... No, thank you. Let's see. Despite being surrounded by nations speaking Slavic tones, Romanian is closer to Italian than it is to Ukrainian, despite cross-pollination over the years. The reason I use a double R, representing a trilled R, in my spelling of Roma for the nomadic ethnic group is for disambiguation purposes, because in the Romanian language, the word for Romanian people is Romani. I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. The double R spelling is also used within Romania for this reason. Historically, Romania has always had a relatively high population of Roma, and historically speaking, they have, I think it is fair to say, almost never been treated well. Today, Roma are the second largest ethnic minority in Romania behind Hungarians, but despite the similar names, the Romani have never treated Romani people very well. From the time of their arrival in the region in the 1370s until the emancipations of the 1840s and 50s, Romani people were enslaved within their principalities of Wallachia and Moldavia and made serfs in Transylvania. In the 1940s, there were genocidal programs carried out against them, and under the communist regime, there were attempts made to force Roma to live in government-built housing and abandon their traditional culture. Since the fall of the communist government, Roma are extremely discriminated against in Romania, and it is mainstream there to be racist against them. Which brings us to Tzigani, which can be a confusing word in Dracula until you know that the Romanian language didn't have standardized orthography until 1881. Basically, the only place you'll see the word Zigani today is in Dracula, or in modern Gothic horror fiction copying Dracula without thinking and treating Zigani as just the word for Dracula's servants or something. In the novel, Stoker uses it as if it referred to a specific group of Romani people, ones native to the area around Castle Dracula in the Kalamani Mountains. However, Zigani is really just a phonetic transliteration of the Romanian word Zigani, which is just the Romanian word for gypsy. The letter Z in Romanian indicates a kind of TZ sound, like in the word pizza. It is also found in Vad Dracula's epithet, Zepesh, means the impaler, and is pronounced like Zepesh. So Zigani sounds like Zigani, and is also similar to the word for gypsies in many other languages. Singari in Italian, Singin in Turkish, Zigani in Hungarian, Singanoi in Greek, etc. These are all still slurs and descend from the word Atsinganos from the Greek-speaking Eastern Roman Empire, which means untouchable. Zigani is still a commonly used word in Romania, partially due to the racism and partially due to the desire of the part of Romani to avoid association with Romani. There is a feeling in Romanian that the word Romani gives Romanians abroad a bad name due to racism against Romani people in many parts of the world. This is all, of course, absolutely terrible. So to summarize, gypsy equals at best inaccurate, at worst a slur. Romani equals 19th century English for Romani, often spelt today as Romani, a common acceptable name for a diverse group of nomadic peoples ultimately descended from northern India. Romanian equals Romanian, a person from Romania. Zigani equals Stoker's attempt at spelling Zigani, a Romanian language slur for Romani people. And they also have a little thing here. Addendum, it is always a good reminder to note that within Romania, Vlad Tepes is considered a national hero and is considered to have been good for the Romani people because he integrated them into his armies. Of course, another way of looking at that would be that he used his slaves to boost his numbers in battle rather than some egalitarian racial integration policy. However, in tracing the connection between Dracula and Roma, it is also worth pointing out that the first epic poem written in Romanian is the Țiganiada, which is about an army of Roma and angels led by the heroic Vlad against the Turks and various strigoi. Oh, hello, Dead. Not quite surrounded. Hungarian is not Slavic. Fair. I want to make sure I know what strigoi is. Strigoi. Okay, yeah. So in Romanian mythology, they're troubled spirits that are said to have risen from the grave. They're attributed with the abilities to transform into an animal, become invisible, and to gain vitality from the blood of their victims. Bram Stoker's Dracula may be modern interpretation of the strigoi through their historic links with vampirism. So that's very interesting. This is all really interesting, but just for that little last bit, it's very interesting that there's this story about Vlad leading an army against a vampiric type creature. So you know, I don't I don't know exactly how accurate this is, but this is just like the first real actual helpful thing that I found, both in figuring out how to pronounce that word and in like figuring out why like some like readings of Dracula, they'll put like a warning for like racism and stuff, and I didn't understand it well enough, and so now I understand, yeah, there are some racist terms in there. And to be clear, I do not support that. I am reading the book as it is, you know, as it is written, and the book just unfortunately happens to have some racist terms, but I do not support, you know, using those terms today for these people. But anyways, so yeah, there's a little linguistic history for you, which hopefully they're correct about. And if you find that this person is not correct, please correct me. please let me know, either in this chat or in the comments when I post it as a VOD. But yeah, so there's your fun little intro before we actually begin our reading. But yes, so as I said in the VOD, I'll go grab June 5th from the previous stream and stick it right here. June 5th, Dr. Seward's diary, 5th of June. The case of Renfield grows more interesting the more I get to understand the man. He has certain qualities very largely developed: selfishness, secrecy, and purpose. I wish I could get at what is the object of the latter. He seems to have some settled scheme of his own, but what it is, I do not yet know. His redeeming quality is a love of animals, though indeed he has such curious turns in it that I sometimes imagine he is only abnormally cruel. His pets are of odd sorts. Just now, his hobby is catching flies. He has at present such a quantity that I have had myself to expostulate. To my astonishment, he did not break out into a fury, as I expected. No, okay. But took the matter in simple seriousness. I thought for a moment, and then said, "May I have 3 days? I shall clear them away." Of course, I said that would do. I must watch him. I think I missed something there. What does expostulate mean? Oh, argue. Okay. To reason earnestly with someone against something that person intends to do or has done. Okay, so he's gonna reason against having the flies? So you have so many flies that I have to reason against. You have too many flies, Renfield. So I guess he's saying hey, you have too many flies, Renfield, and he thinks he's gonna, fly into a fury. And he's like, no, Oh, okay, so that was, okay, yeah, I totally misread that. I think I read this as I, but no, it was Renfield. Okay, so I read that wrong. Okay, yeah. That makes more sense. But yeah, no, I don't think he has a love of animals, Dr. Seward. I think you're more in line with the abnormally cruel hypothesis. I do really like I said, I don't think that I completed Renfield's story in any way, but I really I think the letters are particularly great in this sort of storyline, that having it be developments that happen we have this mental health patient and we don't really know what's going on with them, and here's your first entry, here's what they're up to, here's what I think of them, and then you see progressively more weird stuff is happening and it's adding to the mystery and the spookiness and stuff. I think the letter format works really great for this particular aspect of the story. It is interesting how he continues to emphasize the selfishness thing, almost like it's a good thing, when I think a lot of the times we would say that's a bad thing. But it's yeah, selfishness, secrecy, and purpose. I don't know about those qualities, man. Maybe you should keep watching him. Keep watching him. And yeah, if you have a patient that is being secret about something, yeah, you probably should endeavor to figure out what's going on there. And then I could just imagine Dr. Seward going into the room and and watching him and going out and being you know what? He has his faults and stuff, but he does love animals. And it's I don't think so. Stick it right here. But for now, live, let us begin with not June 25th, but June 17th. Why did I not scroll to the proper place? Alrighty. June 17th. Jonathan Harker's journal, kept in shorthand. 17th June. This morning, as I was sitting on the edge of my bed, cudgeling my brains, I heard, without cracking of whips and pounding and scraping of horses' feet, up the rocky path beyond the courtyard. With joy, I hurried to the window, and saw drive into the yard 2 great litter wagons, each drawn by 8 sturdy horses, and at the head of each pair a Slovak, with his wide hat, great nail-studded belt, dirty sheepskin, and high boots. They had also their long staves in hand. I ran to the door, intending to descend and try to join them through the main hall, as I thought that way might be open for them. Again, a shock. My door was fastened on the outside. Is that really a shock at this point, Jonathan? I feel like that's something you can expect at this point. I was gonna look up liter wagon. This sounds huge if 8 horses are pulling it. Oh, okay. It's just like an old wagon with like the wood on the 2 sides. Nothing too special, but I do still think, yeah, I see a picture. Well, maybe it's not that. I was gonna say I see a picture with 2 horses, but it's a different wagon. But anyway, so yeah, that's so many horses. That's huge. All right. Then I ran to the window and cried to them. They looked up at me stupidly and pointed, but just then the hetman of the Szigany came out, and seeing them pointing to my window, said something, at which they laughed. Henceforth, no effort of mine, no piteous cry or agonized entreaty, would make them even look at me. They resolutely turned away. The liter wagons contained great square boxes with handles of thick rope. These were evidently empty by the ease with which the Slovaks handled them, and by their resonance as they were roughly moved. When they were all unloaded and packed in a great heap in one corner of the yard, the Slovaks were given some money by the Szigany, and, spitting on it for luck, lazily went each to his horse's head. Shortly afterwards, I heard the cracking of their whips die away in the distance. All right. Oh yeah, so that's that. That's the whole thing. We just got some wagons showing up, and Jonathan has some hope but can't get out of the door. Oh yeah, and then these are. Let me make sure I didn't miss something. That's very short. It's pretty short. Okay. All right. But yeah, I think these are the boxes that he's gonna put dirt in, because he needs like dirt, and then also himself because he needs dirt from his home country. I think that's what these are. But not much to say about this one. But a good little scene. Let's move on. June 18th, Dr. Seward's diary. 18th of June. He's turned his mind now to spiders, and has got several very big fellows in a box. He keeps feeding them with his flies, and the number of the latter is becoming sensibly diminished, though he has used half his food in attracting more flies from outside to his room. This one's definitely very strange in a vacuum. Like, it's cool. Like, this is part of what's fun about reading them on the days. And granted, I'm not reading them on the days. I'm doing all of June in one big stream. But, reading them in order at the very least. Because as far as I know, in the book, they're just all right next to each other. I think I could find it, hopefully, fairly easily. Maybe not as easily as I wanted to. Yeah, I don't know how well you'll see it, but all of this is just like his entries about Renfield, and so the 18th of June is just that little one right there. So yeah, you get to like see everything he's thinking about him, but now we see how long it takes between the different entries. And of course, like, or not of course, but when I read the book, I don't pay very good attention to the dates and stuff, and again, that's part of what makes it fun to read it this way, because I just like skip over the dates and don't realize, oh, these things are actually quite far apart. And because I'm thinking like, today flies, tomorrow spiders, then whatever the next thing is, but it actually takes a while. But it definitely, Renfield's whole situation definitely feels like what's the nursery rhyme called? It's like the lady who swallowed a fly, and she like swallows a spider to take care of the fly, and then swallows something else to take care of the spider. And that's just like, that seems like Renfield's whole progression. But anyways, I also love, like, the calm detachedness of it. It's not like, like, oh, the poor man, he's not eating, or like, oh, I thought he liked the flies. I wonder why now he's all about the spiders. It's just like, okay, spiders now. All right. But yes, spiders now. Let us go on. June 24th, and this chapter does include the death of a baby. This is kind of the sequel to the earlier conversation that we were having. So just a little FYI. Jonathan Harker's journal, kept in shorthand. 24th of June, before morning. Last night, the Count left me early and locked himself into his own room. As soon as I dared, I ran up the winding stair and looked out of the window, which opened south. I thought I would watch for the Count, for there is something going on. The Zingani are quartered somewhere in the castle and are doing work of some kind. I know it, for now and then I hear a far-away muffled sound, as of a mattock and spade, and whatever it is, it must be the end of some ruthless villainy. So, yes, so it does seem like it's the earth stuff. They need to take country dirt. But also, like, again, this is Jonathan's, like, Jonathan's judgment is kind of all over the place, because there are things that he should be freaking out about that he doesn't freak out about. And then things that aren't as big of a deal that he freaks out a lot about. And so, like, in this case, it's like, I hear the sound of them digging. It must be something horrible. And, like, I don't know, like, they're just, the ultimate plan is horrible vampire stuff, but they're just taking dirt from the country. So, I don't think you can, I just think it's funny that he'll, like, hear, like, he'll have Dracula clearly about to go for the jugular, and he's like, that's a little strange. And then here, it's like, they're digging. It's horrible. And of course, like, I'm well aware that, like, at the time of the mirror scene, he didn't know all the vampirism and the fact that the villainy going on, and now he is aware of it, and so he's hearing devils in every sound and stuff. It's just funny. But anyways, I had been at the window somewhat less than half an hour when I saw something coming out of the Count's window. I drew back and watched carefully, and saw the whole man emerge. It was a new shock to me to find that he had on a suit of clothes, which I had worn whilst travelling here, and slung over his shoulder the terrible bag which I had seen the women take away. There can be no doubt as to his quest, and in my garb, too. This, then, is his new scheme of evil, that he will allow others to see me as they think, so that he may both leave evidence that I have been seen in the towns or villages posting my own letters, and that any wickedness which he may do shall, by the local people, be attributed to me. And it makes me rage to think that this can go on, and whilst I am shut up here, a veritable prisoner, but without that protection of the law which is even a criminal's right and consolation. I thought I would watch for the Count's return, and for a long time I sat doggedly at the window. Then I began to notice that there were some quaint little specks floating in the rays of moonlight. They were like the tiniest grains of dust, and they whirled around and gathered in clusters in a nebulous sort of way. I watched them with a sense of soothing, and a sort of calm stole over me. I leaned back in the embrasure in a more comfortable position, so that I could enjoy more fully the aerial gamboling. What does gambling mean when it's spelled that way? I'm assuming it means like dancing. Dancing in the air. Gamble. Cavort, frolic, prance. Yep, that's exactly what it is. To skip about as in dancing or playing frolic. Makes sense. But yeah, I'll probably have more to say later, but when I first read this, I was like, okay, like, I didn't fully get how terrible this was, but, yeah, once we continue, it's pretty darn bad. It's pretty darn evil. But yeah, and then I like the little mention of, like, even criminals have the protection of the law, and I don't. Like, everybody thinks A, I'm okay, and B, that I'm the one doing these horrible things. Like, that's really bad. That this, like, to me, like, again, it gets worse, but this to me, like, makes me, like, reading it feel so much more trapped than just the prison thing. Like, it's one thing, like, oh, I'm imprisoned by, this guy that I thought was a good guy. But, like, he's going out and he's doing terrible things, and Jonathan knows what's in that bag. And he's making people think I'm fine. Like, the hope that I could have that people might be like, where's Jonathan, is now gone. And, the hope that I could have that people don't think I'm a terrible villain is also now gone. So, yeah, it's icky. Very, very reasonable thing to rage about. It also is funny just thinking about, like, oh my gosh, the Count, like, he's going out of the window, lizard fashion, in my clothes, and he's making people think I'm both alive and terrible. Oh, look, cute little dust specks, frolicking in the wind. Maybe that's evidence he's losing it a little bit. He has to take pleasure in, like, the little things. He has to take pleasure in the dust dancing about because his life is terrible. Well, this moment in his life is, at least. Something made me start up, a low, piteous howling of dogs, somewhere far below in the valley, which was hidden from my sight. Louder it seemed to ring in my ears, and the floating motes of dust to take new shapes to the sound as they danced in the moonlight. Excuse me. I felt myself... Oh yeah, it was moonlight, not sunlight. I always think of the rays as sunlight, when you have the little specks in them. I felt myself struggling to awake to some call of my instincts. Nay, my very soul was struggling, and my half-remembered sensibilities were striving to answer the call. I was becoming hypnotized. Quicker and quicker danced the dust. The moonbeams seemed to quiver as they went by me into the mass of gloom beyond. More and more they gathered, till they seemed to take dim phantom shapes. And then I started, broad awake and in full possession of my senses, and ran screaming from the place. The phantom shapes, which were becoming gradually materialized from the moonbeams, were those of the three ghostly women to whom I was doomed. I fled, and felt somewhat safer in my own room, where there was no moonlight, and when the lamp was burning brightly. What did he say was locked at the beginning? Oh, it was in 17. It says my door, not the front door. Well, it is a different day, so maybe his door did get unlocked by the 24th. What were you doing for all those days in the middle, Jonathan? Just freaking out in your room. But I do think that's a cool image. I don't, come to think of it, I haven't seen a lot of like Dracula movies. Like I've seen like Castlevania. I've played the Castlevania games, and I've seen like retellings that are like somebody else's version of Dracula. But I haven't seen that many interpretations of just Dracula. And so I'm curious if this scene like is in the movies or is one of the things that they skip. But that is a really cool and terrifying image of just like, oh, let's take pleasure in the little things. Like here's the dust dancing, and he kind of starts to fall half asleep, and as he is, like, he's starting to get hypnotized, and the dust is turning into shapes, and it's turning into the ladies. It's a pretty cool image. And also pretty terrifying, again, especially with the trapped feeling that you get from the other, from what just happened. And I also really like my very soul was struggling. I think that's cool. As I often say, not cool for Jonathan, but a cool image. When a couple of hours had passed, I heard something stirring in the Count's room. Something like a sharp wail, quickly suppressed. And then there was silence, deep, awful silence, which chilled me. With a beating heart, I tried the door, but I was locked in my prison and could do nothing. I sat down and simply cried. Okay, so he was somewhere else. Maybe I missed it. So Dracula's in his room at this point. Okay, so he went up the winding stair, looked out the window. Okay, so he basically just went up the stairs to look out the window. And then he saw the ladies. And then he went back to his room. But Dracula did say he was safe in his room, so I guess that's why they stopped pursuing him, presumably. And then, so then that, again, another element to the terror is that, like, the door is actually unlocked and he's able to go out and look out the window and everything. And then when he comes back, like, without even hearing it lock or anything, suddenly it's locked now. Yeah. As I sat, I heard the sound in the courtyard without, the agonized cry of a woman. I rushed to the window and, throwing it up, peered out between the bars. There indeed was a woman with disheveled hair, holding her hands over her heart, as one distressed with running. She was leaning against a corner of the gateway, where when she saw my face at the window, she threw herself forward and shouted in a voice laden with menace, "Monster! Give me my child!" She threw herself on her knees, and raising up her hands, cried the same words in tones which wrung my heart. Then she tore her hair and beat her breast, and abandoned herself to all the violences of extravagant emotion. Finally, she threw herself forward, and though I could not see her, I could hear the beating of her naked hands against the door. Somewhere high overhead, probably on the tower, I heard the voice of the Count, calling in his harsh, metallic whisper. His call seemed to be answered from far and wide by the howling of wolves. Before many minutes had passed, a pack of them poured like a pent-up dam when liberated, and through the wide entrance into the courtyard. There was no cry from the woman, and the howling of the wolves was but short. Before long they streamed away, singly licking their lips. I could not pity her, for I knew now what had become of her child, and she was better dead. What shall I do? What can I do? How can I escape from this dreadful thing of night and gloom and fear? Reading in this format makes me want to clap after we finish. No claps for the horrors. But yeah, like I said, it got worse. Yeah, this part really tugs at the heartstrings to me. Like, And like, I don't know how well I voiced it, but I heard it as an audiobook the first time too, and it's like, oh, that's spooky. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And I don't know why. that makes it more horrifying. I don't know why he took her baby, and like he like brought it into the room with the ladies, and it kind of seemed like they were gonna eat it, but then like there was a muffled cry in the count's room. So I don't know if, like, him drinking the blood of a baby makes him extra youthful, or something like that. I don't know if that ever gets answered. I don't remember it being answered in, like, this section the first time I read it. And just a little reminder, I got to the part where Lucy starts acting weird. That's pretty much where I got, and I haven't gone farther than that. But I don't remember that getting answered. But, like I said, it's already horrifying. Well, actually, back up. First time I read it, like I said, I didn't know it was a baby. I thought it was an animal, which is already pretty bad, but it's a different feeling knowing it's a baby. And so then going here, getting to this chapter, and it being this, and this being my reveal of that, I was like, I need to sit down for a bit. This is pretty horrifying. And I'm kind of, I didn't think about this, but I'm kind of curious, because I don't usually, how do I want to phrase this? Like, I think of the horror of Dracula, being more of the overall vibes, like the overall vibes of, like, this horrible vampire king who's, killing people and stuff like that. But it's definitely in these, like, smaller, more real moments that I find it more horrifying. Because this feels like something that does happen in real life, not the vampire part, but like this kind of scene, and so it just hurts. It's just so sad, and so horrifying, and so much more horrifying than if it were just like, I don't know, her 15-year-old son or something. This is like a little baby who had its whole life ahead of it, and it like was stolen out of its crib, which I think, as I say that, I think there are legends of like creatures that do that as well, and so I wonder if Stoker was kind of combining Dracula with those legends as well. But yeah, and then just seeing the grief of the mom, and it's like, I hate to say it, but Jonathan might be right, and it also tells you like the state that Jonathan is in, because I don't know for sure, but I feel like he wouldn't usually say a line like this, and so like it really is bad, for him to think that. And again, like this image of the wolves is very cool too. Let's see, where is it? Like he hears the count. I like the word metallic. I think that's really interesting, a word to use. And that makes him feel extra inhuman. So he like calls, and then all the wolves answer, and then they like pour out into the courtyard. I don't know if they were in the castle or if it was like they were in the woods and all poured into the courtyard, but like that, again, that'd be so cool to see in the movie. I mean, horrifying, but cool to see in the movie, like just all the wolves, almost like waves of wolves going to the courtyard, and like you don't even see the violence, you don't hear her scream, you just see them now going away, licking their lips and stuff. Pretty cool little image. And then I like the description, the adjectives of night and gloom and fear. That's neat too. Alrighty, let's go on. This is the actual next day. June 25th. Jonathan Harker's journal, kept in shorthand. 25th of June, morning. No man knows till he has suffered from the night how sweet and how dear to his heart and eye the morning can be. when the sun grew so high this morning that it struck the top of the great gateway opposite my window. The high spot which it touched seemed to me as if the dove from the ark had lighted there. My fear fell from me as if it had been a vaporous garment which dissolved in the warmth. I must take action of some sort whilst the courage of the day is upon me. Last night, one of my post-dated letters went to post, the first of that fatal series which is to blot out the very traces of my existence from the earth. Let me not think of it. Action! Is that another thing that's from Hamlet? That sounds Shakespearean, the let me not think of it. Let's move on. Excuse me. But I realized I forgot there was something else I wanted to say, because this was the extra horror of him going out as Jonathan. Like I said, the first time I read it, I was like, didn't realize how bad it was, but knowing, like, this is really bad, and she thinks Jonathan did it. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I not want to be Jonathan right now for so many reasons. But it's bad enough to just see this scene and hear this scene and be like, oh, you poor lady. But her thinking that you did it, and like, he might have been able to shout out the window like, I didn't do it. But I doubt that would have worked. I doubt the Count would have let him do that. So it's just like, that adds so much to the horror of the scene, is like, him being basically falsely accused of this horrible thing. But anyways, and that is fair. That the morning would feel pretty great after that horribleness. Alright. It has always been at nighttime that I have been molested or threatened, or in some way in danger or in fear. I have not yet seen the Count in the daylight. Can it be that he sleeps when others wake? That he may be awake whilst they sleep? If I could only get into his room. But there's no possible way. The door is always locked. No way for me. Yes, there is a way, if one dares to take it. Where his body has gone, why may not another body go? I have seen him myself crawl from his window. Why should I not imitate him, and go in by his window? The chances are desperate, but my need is more desperate still. I shall risk it. At the worst, it can only be death, and a man's death is not a calf's, and the dreaded hereafter may still be open to me. God help me in my task. Goodbye, Mina. If I fail, goodbye. My faithful friend and second father, goodbye. And last of all, Mina. Wait, yeah, I was wondering, he did say Mina here. He said Mina twice. Goodbye, Mina. Goodbye, I'm assuming he means like his boss. Goodbye, my boss. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, Mina. But fair. First of all, again, you're thinking like a winner. There you go. And he's been trying to train you to do that too, basically. Or maybe he hasn't been actively trying to train him to be up at night. He's just that has been up at night and has I don't know, because like it could have been that Jonathan just went to bed and then got up in the morning and nobody's awake, and so I do think there was some training that had to be involved to get him on the right schedule. But anyways, and then yeah, fair thoughts. Yeah, like, I do not blame him for being like, there is one way to get out. It's the window. Let's try it. He's desperate. He's been falsely accused. Let's try to be a lizard. Alright. Same day, later. I have made the effort, and God helping me, I have come safely back to this room. I must put down every detail in order. I went whilst my courage was fresh, straight to the window on the south side, and once got outside on the narrow ledge of stone which runs around the building on this side. The stones are big and roughly cut, and the mortar has by process of time been washed away between them. I took off my boots and ventured out on the desperate way. I looked down once, so as to make sure that a sudden glimpse of the awful depth would not overcome me. but after that kept my eyes away from it. I knew pretty well the direction and distance of the Count's window, and made for it as well as I could, having regard to the opportunities available. I did not feel dizzy. Suppose I was too excited, and the time seemed ridiculously short, till I found myself standing on the window-sill and trying to raise up the sash. I was filled with agitation, however, when I bent down and slid feet foremost in through the window. Then I looked around for the Count, but with surprise and gladness made a discovery. The room was empty. It was barely furnished with odd things which seemed to have never been used. The furniture was something the same style as that in the south rooms, and was covered with dust. I looked for the key, but it was not in the lock, and I could not find it anywhere. The only thing I found was a great heap of gold in one corner. Gold of all kinds, Roman and British, and Austrian and Hungarian and Greek and Turkish money, covered with a film of dust, as though it had lain long in the ground. None of it that I noticed was less than 300 years old. There were also chains and ornaments, some jeweled, but all of them old and stained. At one corner of the room was a heavy door. I tried it, for since I could not find the key of the room, or the key of the outer door, which was the main object of my search, I must make further examination, or all my efforts would be in vain. It was open, and led through a stone passage to a circular stairway, which went steeply down. I descended, minding carefully where I went, for the stairs were dark, being only lit by loopholes in the heavy masonry. At the bottom there was a dark tunnel-like passage, through which came a deathly, sickly odor, the odor of an old earth newly turned. As I went through the passage, the smell grew closer and heavier. At last I pulled open a heavy door which stood ajar, and found myself in an old ruined chapel, which had evidently been used as a graveyard. The roof was broken, and in 2 places were steps leading to vaults. But the ground had recently been dug over, and the earth placed in great wooden boxes, manifestly those which had been brought by the Slovaks. There was nobody about, and I made search for any further outlet, but there was none. Then I went over every inch of the ground, so as not to lose a chance. I went down even into the vaults, where the dim light struggled, although to do so was a dread to my very soul. Into 2 of these I went, but saw nothing except fragments of old coffins and piles of dust. In the 3rd, however, I made a discovery. There, in one of the great boxes, of which there were 50 in all, on a pile of newly dug earth, lay the Count. He was either dead or asleep, I could not say which, for the eyes were open and stony, but without the glassiness of death, and the cheeks had the warmth of life through all their pallor, and the lips were as red as ever, but there was no sign of movement, no pulse, no breath, no beating of the heart. I bent over him, and tried to find any sign of life, but in vain. He could not have lain there long, for the earthy smell would have passed away in a few hours. By the side of the box was its cover, pierced with holes here and there. I thought he might have the keys on him, but I went to search. I saw the dead eyes, and in them, dead though they were, such a look of hate, though unconscious of me or my presence, that I fled from the place, and leaving the Count's room by the window, crawled up the castle wall. Regaining my room, I threw myself panting upon the bed, and tried to think. Is the next one? Yeah, the next one's the 29th. Okay. This one's pretty exciting, pretty cool. Hold on. I do like I haven't really tried to use the letter method of writing much, but I feel like I would struggle with it, but I like, little details like this, that it's like, okay, remember, he's writing this down, and so what would he be thinking? He's like, okay, I have to put it down before I forget it, I think that's neat. And then, yeah, go Jonathan, don't be scared, just get down that window, get down that wall. I don't know if this is the side that has the cliff, because I remember him saying that at least one side of the castle is a cliff. I don't think it is, because I think this is the one that leads to the courtyard, but I don't know for sure. I guess it does say the awful depth, so maybe it is the cliff. I mean, that is the more exciting. That is the more exciting option. And then I like the, yeah, I'm not even dizzy. Like, I looked down, I didn't feel dizzy. It's go time, baby. I don't remember what the gold is about. All I could think is that, you know, he just has collected gold over the years and, like, put it in the ground and they dug it up. And, like, he is needing it for his trip to England. But I don't remember for sure. But it is, like, a really interesting image of just finding a pile of gold covered in dirt, and it's all at least 300 years old and from different countries. Pretty interesting. Like, it's again, like, I kind of go back to, what I was saying, like, in chapter 1, like, I don't know, I think it was in chapter 1, I don't know what the readers of Dracula thought of this book, if everything was a surprise, or if they were like, I know what vampires are, I know he's a vampire, and so, like, this is such a great setup for a mystery, because you're like, whoa, what do you mean gold from different countries that's 300 years old? And in modern day, we know that it has something to do with him being an immortal vampire, even if we don't know what. So it's interesting how that goes. And then great image of just descending the you gotta love a good spiral staircase, but great image of just descending into the dark. It's interesting that he says, like, a sickly odor, and maybe that is a little sickly, but I feel like, you know, dirt can smell good. I guess it depends on the dirt and stuff, but it can smell nice and earthy and stuff. So that's interesting. Oh yeah, I really like this image of an old ruined chapel. It's not just like, you know, a dungeon, a basement. It's like we go down this pathway and then we find ourselves in this chapel. So that's a neat image. And yeah, with the roof broken too, I feel like that's often used. I don't know. I mean, it was used in Moriarty. I think it was used in Good Omens. Like, that's, I mean, of course there's more. Those are just some of the recent things I've seen with that. But the image of a chapel with the roof, you know, crumbling or broken in places is a very cool image that, of course, Dracula used. Because it's a cool image. And then, yeah, especially with it being a graveyard, too. Oh yeah, I guess that is like a very vampire-y image of just like a chapel with a bunch of like coffins in it. That is interesting. And then that would be so terrifying. Like, you just are going through the boxes and you're like, huh, they're like all have dirt in them. And then Dracula is in one of them. And his eyes are open, even though they look dead. Like, oh, I'm surprised that he did not scream. And then I love, like, the matter-of-factness of, he's either dead or asleep. I don't know which. Like, he's not that surprised or, like, I hope he's dead. Or, like, oh, he's dead. It's just, like, he's either dead or asleep. Don't know which. We're gonna, you know, go back to my room kind of thing. Which is the correct course of action. And it is interesting that he's, like, making... Because I would probably say, like, use glassiness of death and stoniness of death as synonyms. So I think it's interesting that he says they're stony, but without the glassiness of death. That is interesting. And it's also interesting that he doesn't look super young. Like, it does say that the lips are as red as ever, but it doesn't say he's like, he's extra young. I can't remember... I think that does come up soon. But interesting, it's not yet. And presumably he drank the baby's blood in the last chapter. And then, of course, more cool vampire stuff that would have been presumably very mysterious back then. But now we know what the deal is, that he does seem dead. There's no heartbeat and everything, but he is alive. And also... Also just the image of, like, Jonathan screamed when there were shapes in a sunbeam. But when he sees Dracula in a coffin, eyes open, he leans over for a closer look. I guess the ladies were a greater threat, or like he directly knew that they wanted to drink his blood. Though come to think of it, after knowing that they want to drink his blood, he should be able to connect the mirror scene, the razor scene, that Dracula wants to do that too. But I don't know if he's fully connected that yet. But anyways. And then it is interesting that, like, he's not awake, but his eyes still look hateful. That, I think it probably comes down to the vampires being this evil creature in, this version of the story, that they are inherently evil. There's this inherent, like, hate inside them, perhaps. Which is very interesting. And I think, like, interestingly enough, because, like, every time we have physically seen the Count, he's been very nice and very polite. And even when he's locking the door, he still seems polite. And so it is interesting how, like, that look of hate is not there while he's awake. But, you know, while he's sleeping in his coffin, his dead eyes have this horrible look in them. And then Jonathan zooms back up to his room, which, again, fair. All right, let us continue on. June 29th, Jonathan Harker's journal, kept in shorthand. 29th of June. Today is the date of my last letter, and the Count has taken steps to prove that it was genuine, for again I saw him leave the castle by the same window and in my clothes. As he went down the wall, lizard fashion, I wished I had a gun or some lethal weapon that I might destroy him, but I feared that no weapon wrought alone by man's hand would have any effect on him. I dared not wait to see him return, for I feared to see those weird sisters. I came back to the library and read there till I fell asleep. I love I can't remember if this was in another chapter or not. It might have been, but I love just the casual clarification of lizard fashion. We all know what that means now. We saw it in the other chapter. This is a thing now, lizard fashion. You don't know fashion till you know lizard fashion. But yeah, like, again, fair to want a gun and thinking like a winner, to realize that no normal weapon would be able to kill him. Interesting the use of the words weird sisters. It makes me curious if that was like a more common phrase at the time, or if this is perhaps where the phrase could have come from. Or if it literally is just like, that is like strange sisters, basically. And now those two words together have a connotation. And then Homeboy's just trying to get whatever happiness he can. He just like, I into the library and read. I would say that it feels like he should be trying to escape, but maybe he has been and he just like hasn't figured out what else to do. But granted, like, if he could go out the window, could he shimmy, if he is by the cliff edge, could he like shimmy over to the other side and get down to the courtyard and leave? I feel like there's some stuff he could try that he's not trying. Oh, there's an ad break in progress. No kitties. No kitties in my room to show you. Unfortunately. But yeah, June was very short. I feel like, yeah, May had a lot more content in it, which is fine. Gives a little break for a month. But we are cruising through this. Oh boy, I gotta do a Dracula accent in a second. I'll try my best. 4, 3, 2, 1. Back. Alrighty. Oh yeah, so I was just saying, like, I think there's some stuff he can do. He could be trying harder to find ways to escape. Then again, I don't know. It will be hard to escape. So it's also fair to just try to find some nugget of happiness. Anyways, I was awakened by the Count, who looked at me as grimly as a man can look, as he said, "Tomorrow, my friend, we must part. You return to your beautiful England, I to some work which may have such an end that we may never meet. Your letter at home has been dispatched. Tomorrow I shall not be here, but all shall be ready for your journey. In the morning comes the Zigani, who have some labours of their own here, and also come some Slovaks. When they have gone, my carriage shall come for you, and shall bear you to the Borgo Pass, to meet the diligence from Bukovina to Bridstreets. But I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula." I suspected him, and determined to test his sincerity. Sincerity. It seems like a profanation of the word to write it in connection with such a monster, so I asked him point blank, "Why may I not go tonight?" "Because, dear sir, my coachman and horses are away on a mission." "But I would walk with pleasure. I want to get away at once." He smiled, such a soft, smooth, diabolical smile that I knew there was some trick behind his smoothness. He said, "And your baggage?" "I do not care about it. I can send for it some other time." The Count stood up and said with a sweet courtesy which made me rub my eyes, it seemed so real, "You English have a saying which is close to my heart, for its spirit is that which rules our boyars. Welcome the coming, speed the parting guest. Come with me, my dear young friend. Not an hour shall you wait in my house against your will, though sad I am at your going, and that you so suddenly desire it. Come." With a stately gravity, he, with a lamp, preceded me down the stairs and along the hall. Suddenly he stopped. Hark! Close at hand came the howling of many wolves. It was almost as if the sound sprang up at the rising of his hand, just as the music of a great orchestra seemed to leap under the baton of the conductor. After a pause of a moment, he proceeded in his stately way to the door, drew back the ponderous bolts, unhooked the heavy chains, and began to draw it open. Also, I love the fact that my hand went up, even though it doesn't actually say that his hand went up, because it's just a natural thing when somebody says hark. To my intense astonishment, I saw that it was unlocked. Suspiciously, I looked all around, but could see no key of any kind. As the door began to open, the howling of the wolves without grew louder and angrier. Their red jaws, with champing teeth, and their blunt-clawed feet as they leapt, came in through the opening door. I knew then that to struggle at the moment against the Count was useless. With such allies as these at his command, I could do nothing. But still the door continued slowly to open, and only the Count's body stood in the gap. Suddenly it struck me that this might be the moment and means of my doom. I was to be given to the wolves, and at my own instigation. There was a diabolical wickedness in the idea great enough for the Count, and as a last chance, I cried out, "Shut the door! I shall wait till morning!" and covered my face with my hands to hide my tears of bitter disappointment. With one sweep of his powerful arm, the Count threw the door shut. The great bolts clanged and echoed through the hall as they shot back into their places. In silence, we returned to the library, and after a minute or two, I went to my own room. The last I saw of Count Dracula was his kissing his hand to me, with a red light of triumph in his eyes, and with a smile that Judas in hell might be proud of. When I was in my room, and about to lay down, I thought I heard a whispering at my door. I went to it softly and listened. Unless my ears deceived me, I heard the voice of the Count. Back to your own place. Your time is not yet come. Wait. Have patience. Tonight is mine. Tomorrow night is yours. There was a low, sweet ripple of laughter, and in a rage I threw open the door, saw without the 3 terrible women licking their lips. As I appeared, they all joined in a horrible laugh and ran away. I came back to my room and threw myself on my knees. It is then so near the end. Tomorrow, Lord help me, and those to whom I am dear. There is a June 30. Alrighty. I'm liking, at least for today, I'm liking kind of going through it more in fullness and then talking about it afterwards, unless I have some specific thing to react to immediately. Oh yeah, so we already talked about the first paragraph, though. I also love, like, his compliments make him seem more, like, suave. Like, oh, you return to your beautiful England. And then, yep, we know about the letter. But yeah, the whole scene is pretty cool. That, like, he's like, hey, why can't I leave tonight? And he's like, oh, you want to go tonight? Oh, that makes me sad, but that's okay. And then, he's gonna give him to the wolves. I'm pretty sure he genuinely was. And then, like, Jonathan says, maybe not. maybe tomorrow's fine. and Dracula's okay with that. Like, I think that's part of what makes Dracula such a cool character and such a such a cool villain, is that other villains would be much harder to convince or would throw you to the wolves anyways, but he enjoys this little game. He enjoys being so in control that, being in control, but not, there's this fun element where he knows he's the villain, Jonathan knows he's the villain, but neither of them are saying it or showing it directly. You could count the wolves as showing it directly, but they're not talking the way that, like, a superhero would talk to a supervillain of, like, yes, I know you're the villain, and I'm talking like that. They're still talking as if they're maintaining the facade, as if they're still friends, but they both know they're not friends. That's just cool. that's just fun. And then I really like that line too. Of course there's a trick behind his smoothness. There's always a trick behind his smoothness. And then, Jonathan goes along with what I was just saying. He's like, can I leave now? Like, oh no, like, my coachman's on a mission. Like, oh, but I'm cool walking. Don't you need your stuff? I don't care about my stuff. Like, all suspicious things, but they both know the game that's going on. And then, going back to him being so, polite and nice and good seeming, so much so that he even convinces, or almost convinces Jonathan that he actually cares, or actually means it. Yeah, and then like, oh, I'm sad that you're going and that you so suddenly desire it. Like, this is sudden, but it's all right. You're my friend. I'll let you leave. I do like that image of like the baton sort of thing. And then it is cool because I do think of Dracula that way, of him like holding up his hand and the door unlocks and stuff, but it is interesting to think of it in terms of like, what are Dracula's powers? Like, I guess he does have some version of like telekinesis to be able to move things with just his mind. That's very cool. Makes him seem more powerful and awesome. I don't know, like, I guess, because it does say they came in through the door, but I guess it's that Dracula's not standing right in the threshold, so, like, the wolves are still behind him, And then Jonathan's over here. But again, like, it just, like, the way I'm imagining the wolves move, I'm almost imagining them like water. That behind him, it just, in the door, you just see them, like, running past, like water, and it's just the Count standing there, stopping them. And then Jonathan's like, I'm good. And like I said, it's cool that it works and makes Dracula a very interesting villain. And then I don't know what kissing his hand to me means. I don't know if it means like that. If it means like him kissing Jonathan's hand, I don't know what that means. But if it's him kissing Jonathan's hand, I'd be like, no thanks, smelly breath, Dracula man. No thank you. I like this image too. That's great. And then the ladies are really wanting their dinner. I don't know if they want more than dinner, but at the very least, I think they want dinner. All right. Let us go on. June 30th. Jonathan Harker's journal. Kept in shorthand. 30th of June. Morning. These may be the last words I ever write in this diary. I slept till just before the dawn, and when I woke, threw myself on my knees, for I determined that if death came, he should find me ready. At last I felt that subtle change in the air, and knew that the morning had come. Then came the welcome cockcrow, and I felt that I was safe. First of all, why are there roosters at Dracula's castle? Presumably he's asleep, and so I guess it's his nighttime bell. I guess it's like go to sleep bell instead of the wake up bell. But first question is that. Second question is, if that's the case, how is he not waking up every morning? Because the first couple days he did wake up at night, right? I guess he just slept through it. And then I love this image so much. I love personifying death, and so, like, personifying death as a he, but then saying, like, he'll find me ready is so cool. I love that. Yes, then came the welcome cockcrow, and I felt that I was safe. With a glad heart, I opened my door and ran down the hall. I had seen that the door was unlocked, and now escape was before me. With hands that trembled with eagerness, I unhooked the chains and drew back the massive bolts. But the door would not move. Despair seized me. I pulled and pulled at the door and shook it till, massive as it was, it rattled in its casement. I could see the bolt shot. It had been locked after I left the Count. Then a wild desire took me to obtain that key at any risk. Hello, kitty. Hi. Oh, kitten. Here she is, and little feet. Okay. And let's see if we can get some purrs in the mic. Let's see. Then a wild desire took me to obtain that key at any risk, and I determined then and there to scale the wall again and gain the Count's room. He might kill me, but death now seemed the happier choice of evils. Without a pause, I rushed up to the east window and scrambled down the wall, as before, into the Count's room. It was empty, but that was as I expected. I could not see a key anywhere, but the heap of gold remained. I went through the door in the corner and down the winding stair and along the dark passage to the old chapel. I knew now well enough where to find the monster I sought. The great box was in the same place, close against the wall, but the lid was laid on it, not fastened down, but with the nails ready in their places to be hammered home. I knew I must reach the body for the key, so I raised the lid and laid it back against the wall. Then I saw something which filled my very soul with horror. There lay the Count, but looking as if his youth had been half renewed, for the white hair and moustache were changed to dark iron grey. The cheeks were fuller, and the white skin seemed ruby red underneath. The mouth was redder than ever, for on the lips were gouts of fresh blood, which trickled from the corners of the mouth and ran over the chin and neck. Even the deep, burning eyes seemed set almost amongst swollen flesh, and the lips and pouches underneath were bloated. It seemed as if the whole awful creature were simply gorged with blood. He lay like a filthy leech, exhausted with his repletion. I shuddered as I bent over to touch him, and every sense in me revolted at the contact. I had to search, or I was lost. The coming night might see my own body a banquet in a similar way to those horrid three. I felt all over the body, but no sign could I find of the key. Then I stopped and looked at the Count. There was a mocking smile on the bloated face, which seemed to drive me mad. This was the being I was helping to transfer to London, where perhaps for centuries to come he might, amongst its teeming millions, satiate his lust for blood and create a new and ever-widening circle of semi-demons to batten on the helpless. The very thought drove me mad. A terrible desire came upon me to rid the world of such a monster. There was no lethal weapon at hand, but I seized a shovel, which the workmen had been using to fill the cases, and lifted it high, struck with the edge downward at the hateful face. And as I did so, the head turned, and the eyes fell full upon me, with all their blaze of basilisk horror. The sight seemed to paralyze me, and the shovel turned in my hand and glanced from the face, merely making a deep gash above the forehead. The shovel fell from my hand across the box, and as I pulled it away, the flange of the blade caught the edge of the lid, which fell over again, and hid the horrid thing from my sight. The last glimpse I had was of the bloated face, blood-stained and fixed with a grin of malice, which would have held its own in the nethermost hell. I thought and what should be my next move, but my brain seemed on fire, and I waited with a despairing feeling growing over me. As I waited, I heard in the distance a gypsy song, sung by merry voices, coming closer, and through their song the rolling of heavy wheels and the cracking of whips. The Zagani and the Slovaks, of whom the Count had spoken, were coming. With a last look around and at the box which contained the vile body, I ran from the place and gained the Count's room, determined to rush out at the moment the door should be opened. With strained ears I listened, and heard downstairs the grinding of the key in the great lock, or the falling back of the heavy door. There must have been some other means of entry, or someone had a key for one of the locked doors. Then there came the sound of many feet tramping and dying away in some passage which sent up a clanging echo. I turned to run down again towards the vault, where I might find the new entrance, but at the moment there seemed to come a violent puff of wind, and the door to the winding stair blew to with a shock that set the dust from the lintels flying. When I ran to push it open, I found that it was hopelessly fast. I was again a prisoner, and the net of doom was closing round me more closely. As I write, there is in the passage below a sound of many tramping feet, and the crash of weights being set down heavily, doubtless the boxes, with their freight of earth. There is a sound of hammering. It is the box being nailed down. Now I can hear the heavy feet tramping again along the hall, with many other idle feet coming behind them. The door is shut, and the chains rattle. There's a grinding of the key in the lock. I can hear the key withdraw. Then another door opens and shuts. I hear the creaking of lock and bolt. Hark! In the courtyard and down the rockway, the roll of heavy wheels, the crack of whips, and the chorus of the Zagani as they pass into the distance. I am alone in the castle with those awful women. Mina's a woman. There's naught in common. They are devils of the pit. I shall not remain alone with them. I shall try to scale the castle wall farther than I have yet attempted. I shall take some of the gold with me, lest I want it later. I may find a way from this dreadful place. And then away for home. Away to the quickest and nearest train. Away from this cursed spot, from this cursed land, where the devil and his children still walk with earthly feet. At least God's mercy is better than that of these monsters, and the precipice is steep and high. At its foot a man may sleep as a man. Goodbye, all. Mina. It is funny how he always does that. Goodbye, everyone, but especially Mina. God, a kitty in the chat. Yes, lovely. Oh boy. So he actually, I forgot. He totally did what I wanted him to do. I was like, I feel like you can shimmy along the wall, and that is what he's gonna do, which is kind of awesome. Alrighty, Roo. I remember that I had a specific reaction to the shovel thing the first time that I read it. I wish I remembered what it was, but it is funny that, like, Jonathan's thought is, I have the Count here sleeping, and really wouldn't like him to go to England. I would also like to escape. What should I do here? Shovel. Granted, like, I guess I wouldn't be able to come up with something much better in his situation, but it is funny that he thought and earlier he was going, I don't think a gun would work, and he thinks a shovel might work. But then again, I think he's just desperate. Which is totally fair. Alright. And then, you know, chains and bolts is always a great, like, spooky locked door image. It's always a great, like, it's one thing just to have a door that's locked, but to, like, hear the chains, like, unlatching is another image. It's very cool. And then, yeah, it's scary that it's still locked. And then, like, he gets braver, he gets cooler, he thinks more and more like a winner as time goes on. I love the fact that he's, like, not really scared at all. He's just like, I need to get that key. And so he just goes to the Count's room and is ready to do it. And he's like, he might kill me, but, you know, that's fine. I'd rather be dead than... Well, I was going to say, I'd rather be dead than eaten, but does he realize that they would be the same? That he would either be eaten by Dracula, eaten by the ladies, or Dracula will give him to the ladies after he kills him. But anyways, oh yeah, interesting that the gold, nothing's been done with the gold at this point. And then he just, like, grabs some, like, smart thinking there. And then, so yes, I was right, so that they did talk about that he does get the youth. So maybe he doesn't have to eat the blood fresh. Maybe he kills the baby for a snack later. And then when he drinks the blood, then it especially because it's a baby's blood, it, you know, makes him more youthful than an adult's blood would. I don't know if, like, all blood renews his youth or just, like, young people's. Baby cat. And then, like, makes sense that Dracula's smart enough to, even though he knows that Jonathan knows something, even though he doesn't know everything, he's smart enough to be like, I'm not gonna do it until Jonathan's, you know, gone. Or, you know, he's gonna be dead. He's gonna be killed. And then it's so funny that he's like, oh my gosh, like, he described how horrible this is, and then his immediate thought is, I'm gonna poke him. Yep, that feels gross. It's like, why? Why, Jonathan? You didn't need to touch him. I do like this sentence too, my own body a banquet.
Hi. I can show you the kitty. There she is.
Mocking smile is a great image. So yeah, so he does know that he wants blood. Did we know when he connected that? Because when he saw the ladies, he seemed to clearly be saying the Count is the lesser evil, and so it seemed like he was thinking, ladies want to suck my blood, but Dracula's a different thing. But he knows now that he wants to, you know, suck his blood too. And so I'm curious I'm curious what made him connect, or was it literally right here? Here, maybe I should come down so you can see my face.
Little princess.
Yeah, great little image. I like the way that this is all phrased. Very fun to read. And fair thought. I guess he does have the thought. There is no lethal weapon at hand, but still, like, if you didn't think a lethal weapon would work, why do you think a non-lethal weapon would work? Other than desperation. And then that would be so terrifying. This is such a great horror image of, like, he's about to do it, he's erased it, and then suddenly the head turns. Basilisk horror is a great image. I love that. Interesting. I think, if I understand it, he's referring to Dracula here, so it's interesting he calls Dracula a horrid thing here. And then this is a great image. That's great. I quite like this phrasing. I feel like we often advise against phrasings like this, but if you use it well, it works. I think it works here. I like this as well.
Oh.
Okay, kitty jumped down.
Almost done, kitty.
Alright. I like the sounds far away, nice and spooky. And the chains again. This is fun too. Fun phrasing. Yep. Not much else to say. I mostly talked about him, scaling the walls and everything. But fun stuff, exciting stuff. great chapters here. And I think we have quite a bit of Mina for a while before we get back to Jonathan. And we might hear about Jonathan through Mina. But yeah, greatly enjoyed these chapters. It was fun to basically be able to get all of June in one video at the end. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. If you have someone you'd like me to raid, let me know. If not, I'll try and see if somebody's streaming something vampire-y. Maybe I'll try and find if somebody's streaming Castlevania. Yeah, looks like there's some people. Alright. Let's try. Let's see here. Let's try this person. They are streaming Symphony of the Night. Oh, that's not right. Okie dokie. But yes, it's been a lovely time. I'll see you next time. Hopefully next time we can read this, but we'll see. It's also been a while since I've done Pride and Prejudice, so I want to do that too. So, anywho, goodbye.